is my understanding. Yeah.
Yes, Senator Lara.
So my understanding that the foundation has approached Texas to do this model as well. Important to know.
Good for Texas, good for California.
Eternal competitor, Texas.
Baccalaureate program startup on page 29. This is a Senate proposal. Ms. Hyman.
Yes, last year you adopted Senate Bill 850, authored by Senator Block, authorizing up to 15 baccalaureate degree pilot programs at the community colleges. These programs must meet a documented workforce need in a technical area and may not duplicate existing CSU or UC programs. 12 programs were selected from among 36 interested colleges, and those programs are gearing up to begin offering their baccalaureate programs. The Senate proposes $16.5 million in one-time funds for startup costs, which could include such things as professional development, curriculum development, equipment, and the like. The Assembly and Governor have no proposal in this area.
Assemblywoman.
Yeah, I think one of the reasons why we had no proposal in this area, and there's a concern, is that when the bill was passed, and some of us who served on the higher ed committees were told that there would be no cost, that the agencies would absorb the cost, the various community colleges would take on the cost because this was something they wanted and they had already within their ability, their infrastructure, their resources, that they would basically, that there'd be no cost to this program. So that's what we were told. And so when we look down and see a $16 million cost for 15 programs, it's over $1 million a program, it brings us concern because oftentimes people come and tell us one thing, and then we either get selective amnesia and we move on, and then all of a sudden we discover that they come back for money. But we were informed when these programs were approved that there would be no cost to it. And that was told to us in approach, it was told to us in higher ed, which is a great idea. And my district went ahead and did all the planning and is implementing a program, and they said they wouldn't ask for money, and they haven't really. So it's kind of interesting that now we come back for $16 million. So we did not add a cost to it, a budget to this matter, because we were informed, and maybe the governor did too, that there would be no cost to the institutions, that those who want to do the program could absorb these programs into their current budget.
Yes, that was our approach as well. The districts are getting significant one-time resources, and one possible expenditure would be building a new program like this. So that was how we left it, and not earmarking an additional money.
Senator Lara, then Senator Nielsen.
Thank you. I think, I want to support my fellow colleague, Senator Block. I mean, nonetheless, I think we have to still address the urgent need to increase the number of four-year degrees by 2025, necessitating an additional 60,000 baccalaureate degrees per year. But more above that, I think we need to continue to have this discussion about the master plan for higher education and understanding that we're not meeting our goals, and also the fact that our state institutions are not admitting our California residents at the levels that they should, despite us giving them more money. So ultimately, I think we need to figure out what we're going to do. And I think this program, and I understand, I don't know what the agreements were in the past, but I think it merits us to look at it because as we realize, it's much more cost effective to provide bachelor degrees at the community colleges, where quite frankly the majority of our students are at now. So I just think it merits us looking at it, independent of conversations that happened in the past. We have to figure out a way to increase the number of BAs in the state if we're going to compete in this global economy of ours.
Senator Nielsen, and then Assemblyman Bloom.
Well, I'm a skeptic on this too, and those representations I feel were hard-bound, and I'm not disposed to grant $16 million for startup. That representation was what it should be, and I agree with my colleague, Senator Weber. And, and I'm speaking as one who doesn't agree that community colleges should be in the business of baccalaureate degrees, but with very, very limited exceptions. The Master Plan of Higher Education, as it has been repeatedly reviewed, has not called for baccalaureate degrees. And this is a huge blurring. I would argue we better not even contemplate this until we know if there are facilities available at community colleges for expanding beyond just a few disciplines. And I think at the least we're going to have master plan creep here, so I'm not too interested in going in that direction. I can see in some limited areas and limited disciplines and very disciplined adherence to that, where there would be demonstrated need, maybe nursing being one, where we could accord the baccalaureate degree at the community college level. But I don't want to see us really compromising the master plan. It's worked very, very good for half a century.
Thank you, Senator. Assemblyman.
Thank you. I'd just like to add some comments based on conversations that we've had with Santa Monica College, which was one of the successful applicants and is gearing up its BA program. I don't think that they anticipated the popularity of these programs, or their program anyway, where there's a waiting list already to get in a BA program for what's called interaction design, which has to do with the design and coding of interfaces for gaming and websites and apps and so forth, which is a burgeoning field here in California. So I understand that it wasn't anticipated at the time that this program was begun, but I think the idea here is to try and gear this up so that they can serve the student body that is really yearning for these programs.
And I just wanted to note that our lack of support for this earmark does not mean that we do not support the baccalaureate degrees at community college. We do, and we think they're a cost of, we've been talking a lot about higher education and cost effectiveness and getting students to degree faster and at lower cost, and certainly the community colleges are a part of our higher education system that can do that. And so there are some targeted degree programs that we've heard the same thing as Assemblymember Bloom that are very impacted, and there's a great demand out there. So I think our approach is just not one of earmarking the monies for these specific 15 campuses, but seeing that there are significant one-time monies and ongoing increases, that those costs can be borne from the growth that the districts are receiving.
I don't want to continue to debate the issue of the community college piece, but I do want to consistently remind us, because I have apprehensions about it being an academic period, but we keep in mind that we agreed to 15 programs. We'd agreed to them for a certain period of time, so that we can evaluate the effectiveness of it, rather than jump into something and it just starts blowing up and we don't know how it's going to work. We don't know where it's going to come. We don't know where it's going to lead to the degrees we think it's going to lead to. We don't know what quality the program is there. We don't know the expense that would be needed. And I mean, it just goes on and on. So these are pilot programs with very specific goals that in a few years we're supposed to assess and then make a determination whether how you roll this out to another level. And so often we get something and people get excited, want it, and we just run down the street with it, and then we don't know what the heck we're doing halfway down the road in terms of what we need to do to support the program. So I want to remind us this is pilot. Whether we give them money or not is another issue, but it is a pilot program, so it's going to initially have lots of folks interested. And we know we have waiting lists, but we also know we have waiting lists for kids in English, kids in history. I mean, I can't tell you the number of kids at community college who can't get more than 2 classes from the basic subjects that they need to take to be able to graduate. And that's unfortunate because we really have this tremendous need for the basic education in community college. And we got students hanging around. We talk about the 4 and 3 and 4 and 5 year wait. It's oftentimes because they can't get the classes they need at the community college. So, you know, we need to do a real assessment of how well we're supporting our community colleges. That's fundamental. But I just want to make sure that we know that this was a pilot program. And a part of that, those of us who approved it on the Higher Ed Committee, was that we wouldn't go out and rush off and expand it, and that we would get information and data on its effectiveness, and whether or not then we need to talk about putting it system-wide. because there was a concern about just going system-wide with a 4-year program without the resources and the information that we need in order to create a quality bachelor's degree program. And so we particularly selected very specific places that had plans in place to do it, resources, and had a history that we had some confidence that they could move forward with it. And then from that, we will learn what other schools need to do to rear up to do it if we decide to move forward. So I want to just caution us that we don't get too far down in terms of funding and expansion before we actually even have a year of operation.
What I'm hearing is that I think we all agree we don't need to re-debate the chaptered Senator Block bill.
Right.
And whether we do the funding is yet to be determined.
Yes, thank you.
Page 30 is our basic skills grant trailer bill proposal by the governor.
Yes, in the May revision with some of the one-time money going to community colleges, the administration put forward a proposal to really spend $60 million to really take a hard look at our basic skills classes and delivery methods at the community colleges and really do some work to transform these. Many of the students who come to community colleges are not necessarily at college level English or math and are taking more remedial type courses. Some of the research on this nationally has shown that there are better outcomes for courses that are designed in shorter periods so they can move through the material more quickly and move on to the next level. So there's a whole manner of different course design changes that we would envision that the community college districts would undertake with this, and all with the eye on student retention and student success and retaining more of those students in these classes so that they can move on to meet their ultimate educational goals, which may end up being a certificate in addition to moving on to an AA or even on to the CSU or UC system beyond that. But this is really focused at those students that come to the community college is not prepared to do college level work, but want to better themselves and want to move on to get the skills that they need to get a good job.
Thank you. And Ms. Hyman?
And the Assembly adopted the governor's proposal and the Senate did not. We would note that the concept of one-time incentive grants to help community college districts adopt evidence-based effective practices to improve basic skills instruction has merit. But we would also note that the districts are implementing quite a few new large initiatives right now. They are implementing their student success and support plans. They're implementing their student equity plans. They're implementing their institutional effectiveness plans, and several others. And many of these include a focus on improving success in basic skills. In fact, there's a categorical also to improve student success in basic skills. Many of them include significant professional development components. And we just have some concerns about districts' capacity to layer on another major initiative on top of all of those others. You could consider funding the initiative on a smaller scale, perhaps, either through a competitive grant process that would provide the funds to a subset of districts that really have the capacity, or providing smaller grants, spreading it over a longer period of time, something to make it easier for districts to be able to absorb yet another initiative on top of everything else they're doing. Another suggestion that has been surfaced is to consider using some of the funds for the Chancellor's office to take some time to come up with a comprehensive plan for improving basic skills instruction across districts.
Thank you, Ms. Hyman. Ms. Bosler, is the governor's proposal for competitive grants?
Yes, it is. And I think the vision is that it could be spent over multiple years. I think that the expertise is out there in our community colleges. A lot of people, know how on the ground or know how to do these things, but they often have to be taken off of their course load in order to redesign the course to fit a shorter time period And so that, I think, is really what these dollars would be envisioned to do, is to really allow the districts to have the flexibility to put together some proposals to transform the way they deliver their basic skills courses to increase success. I think a lot of the research and studies I've seen show that, that there are a lot of times failures in those basic skills classes where they're just getting up to the grade level that they need to be to start their program. There's a lot of students that leave before they even complete that, and a lot of times it's maybe because it's on that semester or quarter schedule, and they have taken those courses before in high school, so they may know some of the material, but they're ready to move a little bit faster, maybe because of other family circumstances that require them to work and be a parent as well. So they have limited time and they want to move maybe at a little faster or self-paced schedule. So this is really meant to let those practitioners out in the field put together some good proposals that to really do better with these basic skills courses.
I think this may have come out of one of our members, Assemblymember Irwin's proposal that she put forth, and I guess deal with the governor that she had done over the years and demonstrated not only for herself, but a number of community colleges that had implemented a best practices program, basically. I forgot the title of it, that dealt with basic skills. And the data and the research was fairly clear that our current program is not as successful as it should be, that students are spending 3 and 4 years taking basic skills and working from one level to the lowest level to the next level, whatever it is, and as a result becoming very frustrated after about 1.5 to 2 years constantly taking these preliminary classes. The program she demonstrated basically cut that time in half very successfully at some community colleges, and so it was clear to us that the ongoing march that we have currently now from, English 101 to 102 to 103 to 104 to get to English 1 is a long route and doesn't always have the best practices in terms of skills development, in terms of pedagogy. And so, but this program demonstrated you cut it in half. And so most folks were very impressed by it, including the governor, I guess, that if you really take folks and give them some opportunity to look at best practices rather than doing what all of us have done over the years, over and over, that probably we could enhance the success of students. And so there were a number of community colleges who had done this. And the bottom line is if we could actually capture this, and I think the governor felt very strongly about it, if we can capture this, we could actually cut the time in half, because one of our challenges is that we've got so many folks still at the community college that need to move on to CSU, and we're trying to create capacity there and move on. And so we really need to create these opportunities for folks to come in. But more importantly, it's demoralizing to students, and I've known a lot of students who spent 2 years in community college and barely got to English 1, which is where they're supposed to start. And then that delays a lot of the other courses that they have to take, waiting to do the preparation. So I know that this is, it's $60 million, and I know many of our colleges are dealing with the issue of success, and I've seen those programs, and they're often not necessarily dealing with the classroom as much as support and counseling and letting students know what classes they need to take and those kinds of things, but actually changing the coursework and the course and the pedagogy is a totally different kind of reality than what most of our students, our campuses are doing with regards to responding to this issue of success. So this was an effort to look at that, because we really are and it's a downward spiral for a lot of students. And it addresses what happened in K-12, but you want to deal with, they're here now, we got to go forward. So the governor embraced that idea, so I was pleasantly surprised that he embraced this concept and wanted to look at it, because he is really concerned about our students making progress in the community colleges that are there, so.
Senator Lawrence and Senator.
Thank you. I'm actually living proof of one of those students that had to take remediation for a year and a half. And Dr. Weber can tell you, because she had me I was one of her students. I just question why we need to have this in a whole separate program. I do agree with the LAO that this is just another program to tackle on to our community colleges. Why couldn't we already put it into the student success support, student equity, and institutional effectiveness initiative? And I also do question the $60 million earmark, I think we should, I think it makes sense to kind of plan for this and provide a system and a much more thought-out approach, because I think it's something we need to do. Not only look at what's happening in California, but there's other states that have incorporated successful remediation models with their existing core classes. I believe Maryland has something that they've worked on successfully. So I think it's something that merits to look at, and I think we need to plan accordingly before we commit such a big dollar amount. But I do think it merits us looking at this issue.
Thank you. Senator Nielsen.
I hope you hear the frustration up here in some of us, and I've been suffering it since the 80s. And we've always had this English and math had to be taught remedial at CSU and UC, and made a big deal of it, year after year after year after master plan after master plan. There are some best practices that works. Assemblymember Weber has spoken to some that really sounds good. And we need to quit reinventing the wheel. I would argue in this particular case, although we're somewhat getting into policy here, we can't keep funding the failures. And I'm not even getting into the K-12. Let's just say, let's get this done at the community college level and not be doing that at the CSU and UC level. We haven't even talked about that end of it yet. We're just looking at the community colleges now. But I know we can do better, and we must not tolerate any more of this.
I'll just note there's another item that's not in conference because both houses took the same action, which was to reject another proposal we had in this area called the Basic Skills Partnership Pilot Program. And it was a $2 million effort to have community colleges partner with CSU, because many of the students that are admitted to the CSU are required to take remedial English and math. And so we are trying to, with this $2 million, really put together some innovative ways in order to make sure those students can take those courses maybe in a summer or in a more abbreviated way, and so they can move right into the CSU and move ahead in their coursework and not take longer than the planned 4 years to graduate.
All right. So page 31 is our last item with the community colleges, and that's the mandate backlog paydown. Ms. Bosler.
Yes. Between our January and our May proposal, we had $626 million available to pay down community college mandates, and the main differences here have to do with the revenues that are assumed.
Yes, the Senate adopted the governor's proposal and added $25 million in one-time budget year funds. The Assembly adopted the governor's proposal and added $16.5 million in current year funds, both one-time in both cases.
All dependent upon our revenues. So, thank you. You staying with us, Ms. Hyman, for higher ed?
No?
No?
My colleagues will be.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think we have another LAO handout.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Paul Golizewski with the LAO. The handout that we provided summarizes both houses' plans as compared to the governor for UC, CSU, and financial aid. So I'll go through it at a pretty high level since we're going to go item by item in a moment.
Okay.
But if you turn to the first page, both houses funded above the governor's May revision level. The Senate provided $105 million more general fund, the Assembly $258 million more general fund. There are some differences in terms of how the money's allocated amongst the various segments. Both houses redirected funding. Specifically, both houses rejected the governor's awards for innovation proposal, which was $25 million one time, and directed that money towards deferred maintenance. The Senate plan also redirects funding from middle-class scholarships to CSU and other financial aid programs. And both houses also adopted trailer bill language, which we'll talk about later. So page 2 of the handout summarizes all of the various aspects of the two houses plans for UC, CSU, and financial aid. I won't go into it line by line or in too much detail since we'll be talking about it, but by far the largest components of each house's plan and the governor are the base augmentations for UC and CSU. So the governor provided $119.5 million for UC and $157.5 million for CSU. And the Senate went above for CSU and the Assembly above for both universities. Both houses did set different conditions on the funding for UC and CSU, and the third page of the handout provides some summary information about that, as well as the fourth page of the handout. So both houses for UC and CSU set conditions regarding resident enrollment growth, although they varied in terms of the exact level of growth. They set conditions regarding increasing non-resident supplemental tuition, but again, they varied in the amount, with the Senate assuming a higher increase. And both houses also required UC to redirect financial aid spending on non-resident students towards other purposes. In addition, the Assembly added a few other conditions related to budgetary transparency and cost reductions. And for CSU, the houses earmarked funding, both houses earmarked funding for student support services and set enrollment targets, but again, they differed in the amount of funding that they were earmarking. So the fourth page of the handout just shows you what the two houses did for UC and CSU's base augmentations and the different conditions that they placed on each one.
Thank you. So that is the funding package, page 33, California Dream Loan Program. Oh, sorry. That's pretty much what we just walked through.
Yeah. We just want to give a little bit of overview of our approach in the May revision, which was different from our January budget. Kind of two different components, and I'm going to have Christian Ospina talk a little bit about the expectations specifically that we worked a lot on this spring with the UC. But in terms of the level of funding, there's $119 million that was in the January budget that was part of a multi-year funding plan for both the UC and CSU. And then also in the May revision, another $96 million in one-time money that's part of the Proposition 2 debt payments was allocated to help pay down UC's pension obligations.
With another 170 and 170 in the subsequent years?
And it's some commitments of additional one-time resources in out years. But this is all predicated on many actions that the UC has agreed to undertake over the coming months, and I'll let my colleague go through those.
Thank you. Christian Osmani with Finance. The UC president and the governor agreed that UC, as a condition of the additional funding proposed in the May revision, would hold tuition flat in 15-16 and 16-17 and implement reforms in 4 areas. The first is related to community college transfer students. UC will articulate system-wide pathways in 20 majors, and that's articulating pathways across campuses to have system-wide pathways for community college transfer students to enter the UC. And then increase transfer enrollments such that UC would achieve a 2-to-1 ratio of new freshmen to new transfer students. So that's an existing goal that the university has had. Currently, I believe only 3 campuses meet it, and so 9 of the undergraduate campuses would meet that. 8 of the undergraduate campuses, except for Merced, would meet that over time. The second area is related to time to degree. UC has agreed to develop pathways for students to graduate within 3 years. They would pilot alternative pricing models for summer session to encourage more students to take full loads during the summer, and then review policies related to credits for prior learning. So things like advanced placement credit and a system called the college level examination program, which students can take exams to place out of college level courses. The third area of reforms is related to the use of technology and data. In general, UC has committed to piloting a number of different approaches to using technology and data to improve both operations and instruction. UC Riverside would pilot activity-based costing, which is a way of looking at data to determine the cost of particular activities like the cost of operating courses, and then aggregating those costs to understand the cost of degree programs and of undergraduate education in general. They would pilot predictive analytics, which is a system to better align teaching and learning with a student's particular conditions, and then focusing on adaptive learning. And then the final area, as Ms. Balzer noted, is related to UC's long-term pension liabilities. UC would implement a cap on pensionable compensation consistent with the state's pension reform laws. Thank you.
Could I have you repeat a couple of things you said very quickly? You said that there was some kind of 2-to-1 resident to non-resident or something early in the conversation. What was that?
I hope I said freshman to transfer students, that UC has a goal that of all of its new students, they would have a ratio of 2 freshmen for every 1 transfer student.
Okay.
And so that would require, in order to get there, that would require UC increasing the number of transfer students.
Sounds good. The other one was AP class credit. What's the issue with that?
Currently under UC's existing policy is relatively diffuse, so students face different credit policies at different campuses, at different programs, and so what the president's office is committed to doing is asking the academic senate to review those policies with the goal of creating more standardization across campuses and better allowing students to use and apply AP credits towards their degree programs.
There was no discussion of eliminating AP courses as a condition or element in admissions, because that in itself is a very discriminatory policy.
That wasn't a focus of the agreement.
Okay, considering significant number of inner city schools that have no AP classes at all. My district, they eliminated all AP classes in inner cities. LA has several schools with no AP classes, which means the children in those schools have no hope in hell of getting to the University of California, even if they have perfect grade point averages. And that has happened. We have students with 4.0s who've got an A in every course, but because their individual school district chooses not to put an AP course in their school, they do not qualify to get into the UC campus. And the use of AP in admissions is optional. The University of California continues to do it, and therefore inner city kids are often disadvantaged because if the admissions requirement is a 4.1, sometimes 4.2 on those campuses, you see San Diego's that way, San Diego State is almost 4.1. That means students who come from schools who are maybe excellent students who don't have AP classes have no hope in hell of getting in those institutions. And that's something that I would hope that we would consider in funding the University of California, because until the K-12 changes this policy, which might be who knows when, it really disadvantages kids of color and poor kids in getting to the University of California because the system immediately is rigged against them.